No, we decided to do this work 20 years ago. So, when I disclosed my story back in 1997, I thought that I was the only person that this had ever happened to. And I quickly found out that it wasn't. That I wasn't the only one, and there was a significant number of people that disclosed their stories with me. And one of the things that we also knew is that the impact, right? I think forever we focus on the incident. Oh, that's sexual abuse, and that's a transgender student, and that's LGBTQ area, and that's child abuse. And I think what we know is that we had to get these issues out of the incidents and get to the impact. Because once we got to the impact and understood the real impact of all these boxes that we box people in, is very consistent. So we started educating. What we thought was back in 1997, when I rollerbladed across the country, we started out to want to build a ranch for kids. And what we realized is that prevention education was our biggest gap. And, if we walk down the streets of Toronto, Calgary, Olds, Fort Mac, and we ask people, give me the definition of abuse, bullying, and harassment, and mental health, and your legal and moral responsibilities around that, what do you think the odds are we get the right answer? Not very good. But what are we all tasked to do? We're all tasked to do the right thing. So what we set out to do when we first started doing this training, it actually came from Bob Nicholson from Hockey Canada. We donated our money to the Red Cross when we rollerbladed across the country, and we built and created the Speak Out program. And the Speak Out program was a program built on, on abuse, and but really about trying to catch the bad guy. And that was the way we started 19 years ago. And we made all the good people in the organizations take a program that was made for the very few people that were offenders. And what we found over time was that we needed to build a program and focus on the 98% of good people and give them the tools to be better. Because the reality is, if we look at our numbers, right? If we look at the numbers that suffer from 20%, right? 20% of Canadians at any given time throughout the year suffer from addiction and mental health issues, right? So the odds are that kids that are coming in that you're recruiting to your programs, whether it be sport or art or engineering or staff, have suffered one way or another. And I think when we look at ourselves and we look at how we're going to be a leader or a coach, a dean, or somebody of that program, how are we prepared to handle a disclosure if somebody comes forward, and is it a priority? And so what we tried to do was to give people the basic tools to create a conversation, right? Basic 101 training to create the conversation, because at the end of the day, I think we need to try to nip this stuff in the bud before it becomes a major issue. And we have this conversation a lot, is that we sometimes again stay in our bubble and look in our bubble and think that, they better not attack our program because we have the best program in the world. But the reality is that we can't control what's gone on before kids get to your program. We know we do 150 investigations a month in this city alone. 98% of these kids know their abuser, and 47% of them are abused by a parent or caregiver. The average age of these kids are 4 to 7. We know that the presenting issues of these kids when they walk through our doors are suicidal ideation, mental health, addiction, self-harm, and the list goes on, right? And so these are the types of kids that, because you're a good coach, because you're a good teacher, because you're a good employer, you may be the only trusted adult in their life that they look up to. And I think we need to be prepared to do the right thing if if a disclosure comes our way, or if people come to us for answers. What we try to do is, when we look at stigma, we look at the issues of addiction, child abuse, mental health, it's all connected, right? We know that. Why do kids go to school at a young age? Why do we remember 2 + 2 at such a young age? Well, because it's when our brains are being built. So you can imagine if a kid's going home that, is going home every day to an unhealthy home, or a home filled with, addiction, or a home filled with domestic violence, or, being abused, or parents die in a car accident. I mean, we wonder, we know now that child's brain is going to be built differently than kids that don't suffer from that. So what we try to do is to simplify and make visible the invisible. I think we can't just skip kindergarten and go straight to grade 12. When we look at these issues, we're in kindergarten. So we need to deliver them in a very understandable, simplistic way. And that's what we really try to do. And, I think that, create a foundation for conversation to happen, because, I think there's a lot of myths out there that, Johnny or Julie that didn't make the AAA hockey team, or the star basketball team, or, the dance team that's heading over to Europe, that's abuse and that's bullying. Well, it's not, right? It's not. And we need to be clear on that. And I think that what happens is it sets itself up for accountability, right? It's tough to be accountable when nobody really knows what the answers are and what the guidelines are around these issues. So I think that our goal was to break it down to the lowest common denominator, reach everybody within an organization, and make it your priority. Your priority within our organization has to be respect for one another and understanding all of the above. And so, we train, we just trained 350,000 parents, mandatory training, before their son or daughter would be able to sign up for sport. And what happens is you're actually able to have a better conversation around certain issues. And, it's about practicing the 24-hour rule, right? I don't look at and think that a program is going to be the game changer. But I think what it does is it gives people the confidence that don't usually have a voice to understand their rights and responsibilities as a parent. But also there's a few tools in there that I think we can practice, a 24-hour rule and things like that. But also I believe that this is about a social shift. And this is about social change, and it needs to be ongoing. And so for us, the goal is to empower the bystander. We believe that that's our best defense. If we look at the Graham Jameses of the world and, people that infiltrate organizations, they look for organizations that don't have these things in place. Graham James operated within the hockey world for 20 years because of people's ignorance and indifference. There's lots of people that had an inkling and said, oh, geez, I should have done something, right? And didn't. I don't believe they're bad people. I just think they didn't have a clue what to do. So how do we give them the tools to know what to do? I believe that's our best defense. I think one of the biggest fears that comes with somebody receiving a disclosure is that we don't know what to do. Where do we go? What do we say? How do we help this person? And I think that what we need to do is listen. And we have to practice to listen. And our job is to, as somebody that has received a disclosure, is to listen and to seek out places where we can guide and help the individual get to the experts so that they can actually get the help. It's not our job to be the psychologist, right? And I've learned that over the years. My job is to get them to the place and pick up the phone sometimes when it's 5,000 pounds in their hand. And that is our job. And I think if we look at an organization, I believe that, and we believe, and that, it has to come from the top down and the bottom up. And we can't just have a program that's like, well, if you feel like taking it, you can take it. No, it has to be a priority. Is mental health and wellness a priority within our organization, or isn't it? Right? If you look at, we show up at the workplace, I mean, we look at a lot of organizations that are built on, if we don't have our hard hat on, we don't have our glasses on, we don't have our steel toe boots on, our gloves on, and our fluorescent vest on, and our women's training, we can't even step a foot on the workplace site. Why is this any different? right? We know that mental illness, mental health, addiction is killing way more people than the workplace ever does. And to me, we need to get to that level of understanding and clarity within our organizations that this has to be a priority. And until we get to that place, it'll always be this kind of, well, maybe we will and maybe we won't. And to me, it has to be a priority. And until it becomes a priority, it's not that important within any organization. That's the way we feel. So when we sell our program, we don't sell it to organizations that don't make it mandatory. And mandatory means you have to take it or you're not part of our organization. And when we see organizations that do that, there's significant change that comes with it. Well, if we look at like how important roles are, we look at janitors, right? We look at the people that are the caretakers within schools, or we look at, the people that are making ice at rinks and, that are there all the time, or school bus drivers that are the ones that are picking up kids at the end of the lanes or wherever it might be. They have an important role. And I think we all have an important role to pay attention and to educate ourselves and through our organizations, and again when it becomes that priority. But I think that what we need to do is, a lot of times what happens, right, is if we have a gut feeling that something's not right, we don't know what to do with that, and we go and we try to ask a question and it gets shut down right away because there's no real protocol in place and people just don't know what to do. So what we have to do is be persistent and keep asking and keep seeking out answers until we can get the help. I believe within our communities, it might not be within your organization, but I believe within their communities, there's resources that will help you. There's 24/7 phone support lines. There's places that you can get answers. And I think that one thing that we do have to know is that a lot of times, where we go to seek out the answers in our organizations, they're not clear either, right? So I think that, for somebody that has an inkling that somebody's in need, that's where I think we have to do the work as an individual. It's not taking away their pain by saying the right thing or, doing this or doing that. Our job and the way that we can help as a bystander is by taking the action to make sure we seek out answers and get them to the places that they need to get to and make that handoff and then check in to make sure they're all right. But one thing we also know about this stuff is I can't save anyone. They have to do the work, right? But what I can do is get them to the places to allow them to do the work. And I think that as a role of whatever it is, a dean, a president, a janitor, a secretary, a student, youth leader, the role doesn't change. The role doesn't change. The role is to seek out help for an individual that has asked for it. And I think people ask in a lot of different ways. And I think I think people don't know what to do, not out of being that they don't care. I think people don't do it because they don't know what to do. And I think it's about fear. And so if we can create a confidence within people to know where to go and clarity within our organization, this is what we do. And to know that when we get there, we can get answers. And it's not, the thing is that the answer doesn't have to be, always the perfect answer. People just don't want to get the runaround. And I think with this stuff, we get the runaround, right? And that's why I think we need to create that clarity and really just, break this stuff down just to the lowest common denominator so it's not so scary, right? I think is really important, and to be able to have something set up so that if people do, they are looking for help, they can get it, right? And I mean, like for us, we have all the agencies, you're at the Child Advocacy Center, but we have all the agencies. What's the gift of that? Families walk in, they may get bad news, perpetrators not being charged. But you know what? All they care about is that they're getting answers, right? They wouldn't get answers for a year or more. Like imagine, like I can handle the truth. I can't handle the runaround, right? And to me, that is exactly what we're trying to do. Is like, hey, like, this is what we need to do, like, or whatever the process is in your organizations. But I think that's the biggest gift to the families that come through our center. It's not always the best news, but it's an actual immediate answer and clarity for them, and guidance and help to move forward from that decision. And I just think that there's so much fear around trying to make a decision around this stuff, and it's like, anyway, that's just my opinion, but it's what we see.